Hey! It's the Hoops Boys Podcast. Welcome back into another season, season 2 of the Hoops Boys Podcast with your host with the most, James the Jet, and America's favorite bitch-ass white boy, CProc. We also welcome in the top of the show for this new season with one of our guest spurts, Gregors. So, partner, what are we gonna start off with? A little jingle all the way action? Jingle bells.
For sure. Ho, ho, ho. We were gifted some Christmas games this season. And the first one that I would like to talk about is the Brooklyn Nets versus the LA Lakers. The Lakers have been really struggling this season. They signed a bunch of marquee players or players with big names, and it just hasn't panned out. The Nets have been without Kyrie Irving for the whole season due to mandates, and James Harden also has been affected by the league changing the way that they're calling fouls, and he's looking like a totally different player. Well, at least up to this point. The Lakers lost this game. They actually got blown out. So any one of you guys, can we make sense of what's going on, with the Lakers and what happened here in this game on Christmas?
Greg started off, so maybe we can yell at you after.
Yeah, well, I think touching on Harden, a big factor there was Harden seemed to have woken up that day.
Yes,
and for the Nets prospects going forward, he just seemed off. Who knows for whatever reason. Tired, not in the rhythm yet, shape, who knows? But he totally looked like the old James Harden, which for the Nets, I mean, they're going to have that. So that was huge. I think something I love what the Nets did in the offseason, and he was huge that game as well. And I think what they need going forward, they would have, I think, won the title last year if they had Patty Mills on the roster.
I agree.
Patty Mills gives them another shooter. And we remember when the Nets lost at the end of last year, they were decimated. Patty Mills is, the guy can just flat out score and shoot. He had a huge game that night. And I think, stupid as it sounds, he's an important part of that team to win a title come playoff time. Because some of these guys are A, going to have a night off, B, injuries that happened last year. So I think for them, having him on that squad is actually a big factor. So in that game, I mean, him lights out with Harden playing up to his capability. I think that was a huge factor. And on the flip side, the Lakers struggles, Russell Westbrook's struggles have been well documented, whether they're warranted or not, as far as so much blame on him, but he shot 4 for 20 that night. So, I mean, a lot of the arguments are made, well, why is he shooting the ball so much when he's off? Why is he, I don't think he hit a single three, 20% on 20 shots attempted. That's kind of, in summary, that's kind of your ball game, isn't it?
Yeah. He shot you out the game.
Yeah, and no matter what, LeBron had a big game points wise. I think he had 39 that night, but that's tough. And I don't know if we're ready to, drop the guillotine on the Lakers, but those are real issues though. It doesn't seem to be that him and Westbrook complement each other too well. So I think that game for them was kind of his stat line is symbolic of kind of what their season's been.
Yeah, absolutely.
Rusty had a little too much of the green light, where LeBron always has the green light, and I always laugh because I look at him taking a shot at the end of a game, and he's an extra 4 feet behind the 3-point line. I'm like, why are you doing this? But he winds up making them.
I just the other thing too is and again, a lot of new teams, it's hard to say what they're going to be later in the year, but I did wonder when they added him, just him and LeBron, they're both kind of guys that, they have the ball in their hands a lot, right? So how is that? I mean, LeBron is not listed as a point guard, but he serves as, so I think they're going to have a hard time figuring out how to, yes, they're uber talented, but, talent come playoff time, it's been obvious so far in the first half of the season, that it hasn't clicked too well yet.
Well, let's dig that up a little bit. As far as this science experiment that they built for this year working out, obviously the results aren't there. They're in the middle of the play-in tournament at the moment.
Right.
and they just lost on Christmas Day on their home court. But LeBron you're right. I've like said that a lot. Like LeBron is best as a distributor a lot, and you always would think like, okay, would that benefit Rusty? Because then he could be more of a scorer. He could be off the ball more. But Rusty always needs the ball in his hand, so it's like it doesn't. It's like something. It's not even it works on paper and not on the hardwood. It doesn't even work on papers in reality.
And I agree. And I'm not trying to stick up for or cut on Westbrook. This has to be a tough adjustment for him because he's not a guy off the ball. Like you can make the argument, we're talking about Patty Mills, and I know they're on a different level, but honestly, you could make an argument that adding a guy like Mills, you need shooters around LeBron. You already have him and Anthony Davis. You need shooters.
Right.
Westbrook, I think they just. I don't necessarily see them figuring this out. Like they just don't complement. They're almost not the same player, but when you have two guys who need the ball in their hands, and Russell in particular, yes, I wouldn't. I don't think the arrow is pointing up for them. I don't. I think they'll play better going down the stretch, but I don't think these pieces are fitting too well.
I also feel as if they just like how their lineup is constructed, there's not a lot of spacing out there for them to do what they need to do. Neither LeBron or Russell Westbrook are that amazing of 3-point shooters. You know what I'm saying?
Absolutely.
Teams are like basically leaving them open and just loading up on the side of the ball. So it's like you can't get into the paint. That's what's making it so hard on AD.
Yeah, exactly. Good
they
point.
got a lot to fix over there in LA land. But it was like you said, James Harden seemed to have woken up this game. He looked more like himself than he has maybe all season. And he was able to take care of the Lakers by himself. Well, him and Patty Mills. Patty Mills shot.
But I think this is a good example of a game, like I said, because Patty Mills can knock down these shots that the Lakers don't have a guy. So when Westbrook does go 4 for 20, they're in trouble. It's exactly it. If you're playing D against them, yeah, I know it's a legal defense, but you're going to try and pack the paint as much as you humanly can against them, right? I know I would. Let them shoot all day. Yep.
Yeah.
And speaking of the Nets and expanding on how does all this fit together, is this something that is going to blow up in their face, having Kyrie only play road games due to the state of New York's mandates, or is it just going to work because it's Kyrie and he can score?
Greg, you could start since you're our guest.
I really think with them, I think the narrative's the same as last year to some degree. We know how talented they are, so that's not a question. If Harden, Irving, and Durant are all healthy at the end of the year, and I actually think their bench is better than last year. I think it's a lot better.
A lot better.
They're going to be the favorite, but again, how do we know? With Kyrie, who the hell knows? To be quite honest, how does this play? So really, I mean, in my mind, they can play 500 the rest of the way of the regular season. Are they healthy and clicking come playoff time? They could win the title as an 8 seed, right? That's the way I see it. So honestly, with them, I mean, you have to welcome the opportunity of coming back as much as a head case, I guess, to some degree, or just, you never know what Kyrie's going to do from every day to day, whether it's the vaccine mandates or whether he thinks the world is flat and so I'm not exaggerating when I say I honestly think his state of mind come playoff time is, unfortunately, the Nets, for this year at least, they're bound to that. So yeah, it's TBD in my opinion.
It's funny you say they could win the titles at the 8 seed. Maybe they'd be better off being a lower seed and kind of like falling off a little bit, just because that means more games with Kyrie.
Right.
Yeah. Like I said, I obviously I think they can win the title, but to anyone be able to project what I think, even the Nets know that. I think even Steve Nash knows that. Like, this is not going to be seamless, and I think that's originally why, they decided, like, hey, if you're not going to play all the games, they realize this is going to be an issue. But of course, come playoff time, you cannot keep a guy that talented off the court. I mean, it's.
Yeah.
And I do think I will, on that same point, I'm not sure necessarily how fluidly he meshes, but I will give James Harden credit. He changed his game last year for the better. He really did.
Yes, he did.
He was
Yes, he
more
did.
than willing to be the point guard. So I think his maturity will help this, where I think Irving can really kind of, if this stays the course, can just be that talented, scorer and really, because I wouldn't want Kyrie as the quote unquote leader, just because you don't know where mentally he's going to be.
Yeah.
If Harden keeps this up, which I think he can, I think they're looking good.
I definitely agree. I agree about that as well. I think that Kyrie, the one thing that Kyrie does the best is score the ball. And if you can just simply just put him on a mission when you put him in a game, like, hey, just go and score as much as you can. You know what I mean? Don't worry about anything else. Well, stay in front of your man and definitely score as much as you can. James Harden would take over the point guard duties, and then you always have the ultimate safety valve in Kevin Durant. So
yeah, so I think it can work because Harden seems to have embraced. He publicly stated so last year. Like he's good with being the point guard.
Right.
Like let Kyrie shoot, and obviously everyone knows Durant. So I again, this is this changes day by day in the world of Kyrie, as we all know. So
yeah,
but he's too good. He's too good to not give this a shot with. So that's it.
for sure.
Let's move away from the two annual masters of the hype train and talk about the champs. The Bucks played a early window Christmas game against the soft spotlight shining Boston Celtics, and I got some thoughts on this game, boys. I got some thoughts because I think Jet's gonna be mad at me because he spent a lot of time liking Jason Tatum last year. But I think it's time to trade Jason Tatum. They were up with these. They had these like 12, 14-point leads, and all he does is stand on the perimeter, shoot. Bucks chip away. They come back. Bucks eventually take the lead. And then all of a sudden, it gets down to the end, and it's a 3-point lead, and you have to take a three. And what does he do? He goes to the basket. Like,
right?
What are you doing? The one time you should be taking a three, all you want is a layup. Why weren't you doing a layup before to work the lead instead of letting the champs back in it?
Yeah, it's a big case of like you said, doing too much. This Celtics team kind of reminds me of Portland. Like they're like the East Coast Portland in the sense that their teams are heavily relying on two players, and they just take turns at trying to score or trying to make a play. And for other teams in the NBA, that's easy to guard. You know what I'm saying? They don't have to worry about the others so much because they don't really get them involved. And this game was definitely a showcase of that to me.
Yeah, I agree with what you just said completely. And I believe they blew a 15-point lead at the half, I believe. And living in this area, I just see more of the Celtics, and they've been blowing leads left and right all year long. And Marcus Smart himself, he flat out said publicly to the media, he said, listen, our two stars need to pass the ball more. And just as you alluded to, if you're playing defense against them, you're going to do everything you can to just, double team those two guys, Brown and Tatum. And on top of that, Tatum just hasn't had a great year, but I think that's part of it as well. He needs to mature as a player still. And I don't think we've seen that. We all know he can score. For him to take that next level of superstar, which it appeared he would, he needs to, his game as a teammate needs to be more well-rounded. So I think this game, kind of like we alluded to the Nets and the Lakers, the Celtics showed in that game what they've been. That's a good microcosm. They got outscored by 19 in the second half. Late in games, they're struggling because Tatum hasn't shot well. And again, he reminds me like when Carmelo was going through his poor years. Yeah, we all know Carmelo's going to score 25, 30. But when it's over 45 shots and he's shooting into triple teams at the end of the game, it's not very efficient. I think that's what they've fallen into as well.
Yeah.
Well, that's it. It's not just poor shooting. It's shot selection too. It's like, where is your basketball awareness? You're at this point, you're 6 years into the league, and you got your max contract. You need to look like an actual veteran player.
And for a guy, like I said, with Smart to publicly say that, it's one thing behind closed doors. They're very hesitant to talk to the media about issues like that. I think that was a pointed message to needed to get through to these young guys. Guys, you need to wake the hell up. This isn't working the way we're doing this. It's obvious they both have a world of talent, but the question does lie, and it's becoming prevalent up here in Boston. Are these two going to work together? And that's where now, not to go on a side note here, but the whole Ben Simmons talking in Boston, it's like, well, are we going to move one of those pieces for him? Anyway, point being is there's serious questions now as to, do these two really work together? I still think it can, but there needs to be maturity, no doubt.
Do you think Brad made the right decision going upstairs so he can't be the scapegoat, even though he did hire the coach? So he can't. The coach is always a scapegoat when something doesn't work out. Do you think he made the right decision leaving the bench? So when it does get blown up, it's Udoka's ass and not his.
I'm just my own 2 cents. I have no insight into this. I don't really think that is the case. I mean, I think when they brought him in, they're looking at him in the Ainge light. Ainge is the one who brought him in. Stevens is a great basketball guy. We want him part of this organization. And I think probably it was a discussion mutually amongst management, ownership, the coaching staff, where Stevens said, they regressed last year. He realized that. And sometimes it's not necessarily a reflection of your coaching. It's whether you need a new voice. You need so I don't think he did that. I don't think this was, an Isaiah Thomas type move from way back. I just honestly think he looked at it like, maybe another voice right now with this team, and I can serve the role as GM in a better facility than I can as coach.
Yeah, I don't know. It's it hurts me because I was high on Jason Tatum last season. It hurts me to see that he has an inconsistent play this season. I really like Jaylen Brown as well, and I was hoping that they can figure it out. I think for them two to play together, they definitely need a stronger playmaking point guard to help them navigate through when it's just hey, it's your turn. Hey, it's my turn. Hey, it's your turn.
James, just one quick thing on that industry, just because I see them up here. Why I'd worry even more if I'm them is Dennis Schroeder's actually played pretty well for them too this year.
Yes, he has.
He really has. So it's that's the thing. It's they actually have gotten some pretty good production from that spot. And you're still languishing. That's that for me, I'd be concerned. Because he actually, I'm not saying he's, a top 10 point guard, but he's played well. He has.
Yeah, yes. And they have another really good player on that team that I haven't seen much from since he's been there, Josh Richardson. He's a pretty good 3-and-D guy, and he should be able to help them. But I don't see where he's making a difference on the team so far.
It's a strange dynamic because even Robert Williams, who they call the time father up here, same thing. He has some games where he looks dominant. I mean, especially on the defense, he looks like a big time. So you look up at their record and you're how they're not they shouldn't be this bad is the point, right? I'm not saying they should be an NBA title favorite, but it's they should be better than this record. Let's put it that way. Because they've actually had some decent production out of some guys. But those, I don't know. Tatum on a whole, though, he definitely has not played his best basketball. Decision-making wise, shooting, all of it.
Yeah. Well, let's get into another game that happened this Christmas. The Phoenix Suns and the Golden State Warriors. This is one of my favorite games of the night. The Warriors were they were shorthanded, but they kept it close. And late in the game, it was an unlikely source that really helped them. It was Otto Porter had a really good game down the stretch, and they edged out the Phoenix Suns. So how do we feel about this game, fellas? Partner, let's hear from you. We haven't heard from you in a while.
Well, it was the best. It was definitely the best game of the night, and it was unfortunately the one I didn't catch a minute of. But I heard it was close, which was expected. I heard it was a good grudge match for the two teams at the top of the West. And the Warriors pulled it out. So I guess that's kind of bragging rights going into the second half, which we're almost at right now for as far as who's the top dog. Yeah. Or maybe it just evens it out because, Warriors say, hey, we took the last one. The Celtics like, well, hey, we own the conference right now until someone topples us.
I agree. Greg, how you feel?
So I'm going to touch on someone who I think has quietly made a huge difference for this team, and it's Gary Payton. Gary Payton Jr., seriously, like in that game, Curry went 10 of 27. It's not a great shooting night. They're getting production from guys like him, and you mentioned Otto Porter, but Payton has really given them something. Like they going into this week, which I would have never imagined that at Golden State. Do you realize they had given up the least points per game in the league as of a few nights ago?
That's crazy.
Right? Like you would never think of Golden State in that light. Yeah, we know they have Draymond, but would you ever imagine, myself included? And I remember looking like, how are they, when you try to delve into the numbers, like how are they actually playing? We all know about Curry, but he was doing that the last few years anyway. I really think a guy like Payton has made a huge difference because he does everything well, except he's not a great shooter. And guess what? On that team, he doesn't need to be.
Right.
So he's almost playing like your point forward, like I'm different players, but you know how like Anthony Mason played that role, or Payton is really good defensively. He doesn't need to shoot the ball. He makes so many right plays. So I think he's added an element, and he went 14 with 8 rebounds that night. He can do that in limited minutes. So I know it's totally off the radar, but I think it's guys like that why Golden State is having this amazing season. Every team knows Curry's going to get his 30 plus, right?
Yeah.
It's guys like that are really, and I'm serious. Like every time I watch him, he's making 2 or 3 plays in a game that it's just the basketball IQ is so up there. Yeah. So like I'm totally championing his cause. Like I really do think he is making a difference. He's basically like he's almost like a Draymond, to be quite honest. Mm-hmm. So again, how would the Warriors have the best defensive numbers? Klay Thompson was known as other than Green, their lockdown defender. Well, he's not been playing.
Right.
So I for me, like you brought up Porter, like I really think like those guys are making a huge difference on a team, and they're contrasting what we talked about the Lakers where they don't fit. I think this team does. I'm high on him. I think and then later in the year, Kuminga had a nice game that game as well. Mm-hmm. If you get him in the mix and Moody, I think this is somewhat legit right now because of that.
That's your guy. You were big on Kuminga out of the draft.
You were.
Well, I mean, again, I like the reports were high of him. I'm not pretending like, especially in the COVID year, I'm watching every G League game and with no fans but yeah. Well, no, but I do think their supporting cast though is much improved, and and underrated guys like that are really they're bringing that team to another level.
Well, if you think back to the start of this run that they've had with this nucleus, defense was, I mean, the Splash Brothers got all the attention, and Draymond being his little under the skin antsy type of person that he is, they got all the attention, but they did have an identity as being a highly efficient defensive team.
They did.
And, whether it was Draymond, whether it was Bogut being a shot blocker, was Iguodala coming off the bench and playing a lot of defense, Clay's a lockdown defender. And, I mean, some of the parts are a little different because, obviously, as just said, Clay hasn't played. He's been hurt the last couple of years. Obviously, Bogut's long gone. Draymond's sometimes what he used to be, sometimes not quite so much. So, I mean, there's a little bit of retooling and, all these young players and these role players you went into that kind of filled the gaps. But, Kerr and Mike Brown, it's kind of like the identity of being a defensive team was there.
Mm. But again, I just like I'm admitting myself before I told you guys that if I hadn't looked, there's no way I would have said they're number 1 in points allowed per game in the league. I wouldn't have. I would have thought they're 10 to 15, top 10-ish, getting towards the latter half of that.
Yeah,
I would not have guessed number 1. I was like, wow, that's pretty darn impressive. Yeah,
that's definitely a well-coached team over there.
Yeah.
Yes,
And I think it gets into, again, the same thing. It's like, I'm just using the Lakers again, because how many guys can you have the ball in your hands at one point? And that's what the Lakers are having a hard time with, where the Warriors, they know who's going to have the ball in his hand at all times. They all need to be complementary role players. That's why that's working.
Another West Coast matchup that we got on Christmas was the Mavs going out to Salt Lake to play the Utah Jazz, the nightcap of the Christmas 5-game header. And this wound up, it was a close game by the time it was over, but to me it was a little misleading that it was a close game, because watching the Mavs, I mean, they were just kind of scrapping along with Jalen Brunson doing most of the dirty work or most of the heavy lifting until he ran out of gas. And the Jazz were just the Jazz are just doing their thing, being bullies, spiders, pouring in points left and right. And granted, the Mavs were a little shorthanded. They didn't have Luka or anything, but I mean, we'll just kind of maybe a little quicker on this game, because the Mavs are kind of in the cellar, a little bit in the cellar right now. They're kind of barely holding on in the play-in structure. But do we see anything out of that game that may be indicative of the Jazz's title hopes, or the Mavs kind of next step into legitimacy, or so they hope?
I think the Mavs, you really see how important Luka is to that team when he's missing. Royce O'Neal from the Utah Jazz was guarding Kristaps Porzingis for most of that game, and he's like 9 inches shorter than him. And I don't understand how, if I was that tall, I'm not letting someone like that guard me. You know what I'm saying? I'm putting you in the post every time and I'm scoring. But I think that's just, I don't know. They're definitely a little lost without Luka, but they definitely played pretty good this game to keep it that close.
Yeah, I think so as well. I mean, you asked earlier, can we glean anything off of this from Dallas? For me, it's no. I mean, without Luka, it was a good effort, especially for Christmas night. It's a holiday night. You don't know how guys are going to. Brunson played amazing. Well, I think Brunson has been an excellent player for them, as much as I've lamented their depth on that team. I think Brunson's underrated. I think he's a very good player, much needed on many. He's just a basketball player, right?
Sure.
He's the guy in the combine that they're like, oh, there's no great skill. And then he's the guy you watch play enough times. He's just a really good basketball player.
Yeah.
So I think his increased presence on the team, with Luka or not, is necessary for them to do anything. But as far as I don't think this game in particular, again, how do we judge without Luka? It's even from the Jazz perspective, that they knew he was out. But if you usually play Dallas, you've orchestrated every game plan on earth to Luka, right? So then when he's not there, okay, who are you? Kristaps, Brunson. It's different. You know what I mean? I just think that's one of those games that, the Jazz were happy to get a win. Dallas played well, got some big minutes for some reserves to get them some run, but other than that, turn the page. And I don't think it's impactful as far as either one of their team prospects.
Yeah, and I think I also agree that Jalen Brunson is playing really well this season. I think he's actually up for a contract next year, so hopefully he keeps it going. Go get paid.
Yeah, very nice player.
Deserves it.
Partner, there was one more game, wasn't there?
Oh yeah,
near to our hearts.
This is another one of my favorites of Christmas night. It is our beloved New York Knicks against the Atlanta Hawks. Where New York, we came out on top in this game. We blew them out, for that matter. Kimber was back in the lineup, and he also was sporting a triple double this game, as we whooped on the Hawks without Trey. But either way, to me, it was a phenomenal win. Partner, how do you feel about this game?
I'm glad we're back playing on Christmas Day. I'm glad we took the dub, because we've been a little suspect coming off of that successful season last year, being back in the playoffs, again, home playoff games. And even though we didn't win, maybe put the team that benefited from our shortcomings last year on notice, hey, we're going to punch you in the mouth. We'll be back. we're going to get you back. I think they're struggling to find their identity a little bit. Like, is it still Randall's team? Is RJ going to get more love this year? But other than that, I mean, the Hawks should have had much more expectations on them going into this year after what they did last year getting the conference final. And they just get blown off get the doors blown off like that. They should be soul searching a little bit, even more than they probably were. And I'm personally glad that we were the ones to do them that quote unquote favor.
For my money's worth, I think this game for the Knicks, this is a blueprint of what's going to have to happen right now. Because now that Derrick Rose is out 8 weeks, Kemba had a great game, and he's shown a little bit of obviously a substantial revival from being off the bench. Gets the triple-double. Randall, who has not played as well, he shot the ball very well that day. They had a big performance from him. Mm-hmm. And then you had the other two, you had Toppin and Quentin Grimes in double digits. So the reason I say that is that they're going to need Obi and some of these kids like Grimes, McBride. They're going to play a role now because again, Rose being out for 8 weeks, that changes the whole rotation. So Kemba's going to have to be somewhat of old Kemba for them to do well. Randall's got to be the guy, and they're going to need production elsewhere. So I think for the Knicks, this was an excellent performance and kind of, like I said, a blueprint of where they're going to have to be if they want to have a successful season. The Hawks, I think this, Trey out. It's the NBA, guys don't play every day. I don't judge anything off that game, off their future prospects. They were primed for the taking, and the Knicks, kicked the man when he was down, and that's what they should have done.
Yeah.
So again, the Knicks, that's you're hopeful, and they've now won 3 in a row. You're hopeful that they've found a way to play more efficiently. And for the Hawks, it's get Trey back and get all the pieces back, and let's play better in the second half.
Yeah.
As the longtime president of the Kemba Walker fan club, did he need that little benching rotation? Get rotation spot and take away from him to wake up a little bit?
I don't see it as that. I Kemba's a bright kid. He's not some emotional basket case. I think Kemba's injuries have quite frankly, they've taken a toll to some degree, and I think the more he's played over the years, it's worn him down. So I mean, I think you can't tell me the rest didn't help from a physical standpoint, but I also don't think he's as bad as he played early in the year either, right? So I think this is more, where is Kemba's game right now? It's probably somewhere in the middle. It's not the triple double every night. It's not he's glued to the bench. No, I think he still has gas in the tank, but I think he's going to be tested now because again, with Rose out those minutes, they don't really have a choice. I mean, Kemba's going to have to play a substantial load, and that's where the bench comes in later. McBride and all these guys going to be needed. Quickly will play more, but for Kemba itself, I think the injuries have taken a toll. I don't think, he's a smart guy. He's a team guy. He never once spoke out. I just think, listen, he's still Kemba Walker, right? He's going to have nights like that, and that's it, or days in that case. So no. I think Kemba just showed you what he still is capable on a good day. I don't think you're going to get that 82 games a year anymore. That's Kemba.
Yeah.
Partner, for the Hawks, is it as simple as Greg put it and just getting everyone healthy, or do they got other problems?
I definitely think it's the health kick for them. Trey's been looking pretty good still. Their pick and roll game is always going to be phenomenal over there in Atlanta. They got shooters. Well, when they get their shooters back, because Gallinari's missed some time. So has Bogdanovich. So yeah, I think it's just a health thing. I want to see this team at full capacity for a certain period of games, and they'll definitely probably look better than they have been lately.
The one thing on that same tone, the one thing I would say with the Hawks is I think they're better than their records played out so far. They've had some horrific fourth quarters, and I mean you can attribute that to a number of things. I think over the course of the season that will even out. Reading some of the local media in Atlanta, I think they're a big concern, which makes some sense, is where, James, you just said they have a lot of shooters, which they do. It's like they might have too many of sort of the same players on the wing. Like,
Gotcha, yeah.
like Gallinari, Kevin Huerter, like they're wondering, like, how are they going to, I think they're going to have to figure out a better way how to make this rotation work. But I wouldn't be surprised if they made some move down the stretch as well, just to kind of complement. Because now that Cam Reddish is back, he's played well at times. It's like, where does he fit? I think fit may become, if there's a long-term issue with them, I think it is that. That's something that's going to have to be ironed out over the course of the year, or, probably make a move at the deadline. But I don't judge the Knicks' loss of any sort without Trey off that. It was Merry Christmas. They probably sipped a lot of the eggnog while they're in New York the night before. Get back and enjoy dinner with the families, right? And, carry on. Let's get back.
Got a little too lit up on Midtown.
Yeah.
Well, time to take the trees down and set up all your presents and big Christmas farewell. When we come right back, we'll bring in our other guest expert to put some people on blast and sing up the praises of others. Don't forget, follow all the conversation on Instagram and Twitter at HoopsBoysPod, and stick it with us. We'll go get some more buckets. Swish.
Welcome back to the Hoops Boys Pod. We're back with our guest experts, Shad and Greg. Welcome back. They're going to be with us to talk about some surprises and disappointments. And since we're like in a holiday spirit and in the spirit of being nice, let's talk about some surprises that each of us had this season. I'll start with mine. So the most surprising team to me this season would be the Memphis Grizzlies. They had a stretch where they lost their best player in Ja Morant and went 10-1 without him. And the other players on this team have been playing out of this world. Desmond Bain is making his case to be this year's most improved player. Dylan Brooks, Jaren Jackson, Tyus Jones, Melton, all of them have been playing phenomenal. They've been a top 6 defensive team this year. And currently they're sitting in the fourth slot in the Western Conference, only 6 games out of first place. So to me, they've been the most surprising team, especially since they've been in the playing game the last couple of seasons. I think they're going to have a solidified spot this year in the playoffs.
A great point on Bain, because when I was looking at the numbers last year, the final numbers for their roster, and I was like, oh, who's this kid? He put up something decent. So the fact he's like a legit production guy now, very good. And it gives them finally a kind of second gunner, so that Ja doesn't have to necessarily, he can still be the man, but he doesn't have to be the man plus, right, so to speak.
Bain is actually, he's kind of proving the 3-and-D, like he is the epitome of. Right. I mean, a lot of people thought, what's he going to do in the league? And it's exactly what he does. Yeah, I mean, he's playing better, but he's emphasizing that role even more.
Yeah, he's definitely perfecting it right before our eyes. Shad, any thoughts on the Memphis Grizzlies?
I'm quite surprised in them too. I always thought they've been kind of a one-man team with Ja Morant, but it seems like whatever they're doing is working. I still think they're one player away, like a free agent or hitting on a big-time draft pick from being true contenders. But to be fourth in the West right now is definitely a good pleasant surprise.
For sure. So, partner, since you're like next on the list, I'll ask you, what are you most surprised about?
I'm gonna go with one that none of us expected anything out of at the end of last year, our last show of last season, and with they trade Russie, you get all these picks back, they get all these young players who are, we think like, young players that you don't never heard of, they're not going to do it, they're not going to come in right off the bat. And sure enough, the Washington Wizards are F500. They're right in the middle of this this play-in tournament that we're still doing. And I don't know whether it's surprised because they're just a bunch of young talent, or surprised because, Russie, all his detractors aside, he's still Russell Westbrook, and you still traded a player like that, and here you are, you're still in the mix for the playoffs.
Right.
So, I mean, that's my surprise. Like, I would have figured that's a bottom feeder. This is a full rebuild. Brad's going to go. They're just going to get another high draft pick and start this thing from scratch again.
Yeah. I'm definitely surprised that not only are they still doing moderately okay, but that, like you said, Brad is still there. I would have thought he'd been gone. They would have been moved him and just started all the way over, but he's still there. They're still fighting. It's good to see.
Guess Spurts, what you got on the Wiz?
Wizards, I did expect them to be kind of better. It seems like they got, like 3 to 4 good role players this offseason. And I don't think injuries has affected them, or COVID has affected them as much as other teams. I think they're definitely not contenders. I don't think they'll make it past the play-in tournament aspect, just because I think they don't have as much experience being as good as the other teams in the East. But it is a pleasant surprise that I expected them to probably be like a bottom team like Detroit or Orlando.
So, being that it's Christmas, I'm going to have to be the Grinch here. I do applaud what they've done, and I think they've brought in some good players. I think like Kuzma, Montrezl Harrell, a lot of these guys have played good roles. But I do think long term it's a fugazi, because I don't necessarily, I'm kind of with Shad. I don't think they do anything come postseason, and long term I still don't feel necessarily they're anywhere near knowing their direction. I mean, because again, do they keep Bradley Beal at this point? I don't know. Does he want to stay there? So not to rain on the parade, Chase. I do think to this point they have played very well, but I'm just kind of long term. I still kind of don't know where they are. I don't see them as a contender, and I think they still have a lot of questions. Again, they have some nice young players, and I don't mean to totally, but little bah humbug for them. I'm not as high on them.
Well, I will say, as it lines up right now, they'd be playing the Hornets in the first play-in game. And as me being down in the South, I see the Hornets a lot, and LaMelo Ball is just continuing his electrifying early start to his career. And there's no way the Wizards are going to beat LaMelo Ball.
I wouldn't think so either. And that's like exactly to the point. I think Charlotte, you see a direct path to their future. Washington has some decent pieces, but I don't see a centerpiece right now, because the Bradley Beal thing it's a tough decision. So, bah humbug.
Bah humbug.
All right, Greg, you were with us last segment, so let's give Shad a try. Shad, who are you most surprised by, or what are you most surprised by this season?
I'm surprised by the Golden State Warriors. I know many people were saying, "What? It's the Warriors. What do you expect?" I kind of thought the Warriors peaked. I feel like they had feels like a 6-7 year run, at the top, especially when they got Durant, and then just seemed like injuries were hitting them hard, and it feels like all their star players are 30 plus now. I just thought, all right, their run as being like the top contender, in the West, first, second place is done. They're gonna make it. They're gonna be like at best maybe like a 5th or a 6th seed, probably more in the play-in tournament. But right now they got the best record in the NBA, and you have these young players like Jordan Poole stepping up, and you have Andrew Wiggins, who is actually starting to look decent, being a former number 1 pick. And they're doing this all without Klay Thompson, who hasn't played, it seems like 2-3 years now. So it's a surprise to be doing this without their second best player. Steph Curry is still Steph Curry, breaking records and leading this team to first place finish, looking like the MVP Steph from years ago. And I did not fully expect it. I expected them to be somewhat good, but I did not expect them to be the top team in the NBA.
Yeah, and for them to just come back at this incredible level that they have been. I think you're right. I don't think anyone is surprised that they're good again, but this good. This is like, considering that the kind of the supporting cast and the kind of structure mentality of their team this year is a little bit different than the high flying teams of the past. It is kind of a little bit of a surprise that they've taken off to the start they have, especially because they're still waiting for Clay. So, like, they may kind of resemble a Warriors team of old, maybe, but they're missing a big piece from those Warriors teams of old. So they're kind of like last year's team, but a really, really good last year's team.
Right. And another piece that's missing is Wiseman. He hasn't played much this season, if at any, and they're not even missing a beat. They're really good defensively, and also offensively. As long as you have Draymond and Steph, like, it's gonna work.
I forgot all about him.
Mr. Triple Single.
Yeah, Mr. Triple Single. But I really like what they're doing this season. They're surprising everyone. Nobody thought they would be top team in the West, top team in the NBA.
Yeah,
Greg, how you feel?
On top of that, I'm going ho 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 on this one. I'm totally with Shad. I think the contributing players, we brought up Gary Payton earlier, Otto Porter. I think the supplemental cast has been excellent. Shad, as I touched on earlier, I was shocked by this. I knew they've been good defensively. Going in this week, they had the least points allowed per game in the entire NBA, which is crazy to me, without Klay Thompson. And something Shad talked on as well, which I'm curious. Wiggins has taken a big step. And I think I kind of think if and when Klay is back, I honestly think Wiggins can be even better, because Wiggins then, he's not needed to be like the second shooter. If he's slashing to the hole, with the attention going to be played on Steph and Klay, I mean, he literally can be getting easy buckets left and right. So I think the arrow's even pointing higher for them going forward. Like I never in a million years thought they would be like championship contender. They kind of are. So I'm with you on that. I'm buying.
Thanks, Shad, for your insight. So last but not least, Greg, let us know something that you're surprised about this NBA season.
I think Santa Claus came with all his toys in the sleigh for Cleveland. I'm astonished at what they've done so far. I mean, they're 6 over 500 going in tonight with a team that a lot of people, including myself, would have figured bottom 10, maybe bottom 5 in the league. They're doing this. They basically have taken an approach that I'm not the same players, but the Twin Towers, back to Ewing and Cartwright. They're playing Mobley and Jared Allen together. Especially Mobley at this point, primarily more of a defensive guy, and they've just been phenomenal. I mean, so Bickerstaff, the front office, you have to give them credit. There's no Ricky Rubio, which very sad to hear, like he tore his ACL. Yeah. This is doing it with Colin Sexton out as well. So I mean, I think it's absolutely remarkable how well they've played, how they've gone against the grain. I mean, most basketball nowadays is go away from the big man.
Yeah,
Cleveland has said, well, they've played. I think Bickerstaff's done. For me right now, he'd be coach of the year. Again, they took an approach that no one's used in years, and he's going against the grain, playing big men, playing defense. Mobley, in my opinion, has by far been rookie of the year right now. So of course that's been, he looks far more polished than even you thought he was going to be. So I just think they've done an incredible job of. No, are they going to win the NBA title this year? No. But they've taken a quantum leap as far as relevance, and again, with significant injuries. So I just love what they're doing. I believe they have 8 guys in double digits, and Isaac Okoro, who's turning into a really nice player, he's just below that. So I mean, to have 9 guys in almost double digits, you're getting contributions all over the board. I think they've done a phenomenal job, and for once with Mobley, they finally may be looking at like some better days ahead. So yeah. Santa loves the Cavs this year, bringing all the presents.
I do like Garland as well, a lot as well. I liked him last year, and that kind of blew up in my face. But dust off your crystal ball a little bit, taking into account the Rubio injury. Are they gonna keep this going and finish top 6 when April comes around?
That's a tough one. Because honestly, the Rubio thing, it's kind of heartbreaking. And Rubio has really played probably his best ball of his career. He's been a legit difference maker there. Do I think he's the point guard to lead you a title? No, but with this current version of the team, I do think it is a big loss. So unfortunately, I would probably think they take a step back. But I kind of think this team will find its way into the playoff race. I do. Even if it's in the play-in. I mean, they're playing really good basketball. And, yes, Rubio's a hit, no doubt, but I think they have some pieces.
If they're in the play, if they drop down to the play-in, who moves up to take their spot?
Long ways away. Long ways away.
I was hoping.
Yeah, another interesting thing about them too, if for the Vegas crew out there, they had covered, I believe, it was 13 straight games. It might have actually been a few more. It was at least 13 straight games they covered the spread. So just to goes to show you, what people think of them, the national audience, and like honestly, that's unbelievable. You never see that out of any team. So yeah, again, I would have loved to have seen if Rubio had hung on, and it's going to hit. But I don't, like I said, they're playing such good ball. They seem to complement each other well. I think they still make it into that plan. I do.
As the old adage goes, good teams win, great teams cover.
Like that.
Shad, what's your thoughts on the wine and gold, or whatever the hell Dan Gilbert called them years ago when those jerseys were announced?
Is it really wine? Never thought about it.
I think I'm pretty sure that's what he said. I think it was wine and gold.
I think they're this year's pretenders.
We're bringing this back, are we?
Bringing it back? What? Y'all, come on. Everybody knows that there's at least like one team in every conference, every year that's just a pretender, has a great record, and then they'll just do nothing in the playoffs. They get like swept. I think this is this year's team. They're overachieving. I don't think they have like anybody in that roster that's even probably like been to the playoffs or like much less made it far.
Hey, Kevin Love. Kevin Love has a ring, my friend.
All right, Kevin Love. God, I didn't know he was still in the league. I'm sorry.
Chad has no love for Kevin.
Does he even start anymore? I don't know.
No, I don't think he starts anymore.
Oh, no, he hasn't started 5 years.
Yeah. So, okay, besides like really Kevin Love, I feel like they just don't have the experience. I don't know if they really have the makeup right now to be a top contender. Unfortunately, they're probably going to play a much more experienced team in the playoffs, like first round, probably like a Boston or Philadelphia. And it's just going to be too tough for them because they don't match up and they don't have, I guess, the all-stars to go head to head and the experience to go with it. So I don't think they're a nice young team. I think they're 1 year away, but they just need time to kind of get their feet wet. And this year they're just a pretender.
They might want to play Boston right now because as it stands, if the stands were to hold, they'd be playing Miami. That's probably worse.
Yeah, way worse.
I think for them though, and I don't disagree, but I think for them, if they're anywhere close even to a playoff spot this year, which I think they will be, it's a success. You got to remember where they're coming from. So,
yeah,
they've been completely irrelevant for years, and for the first time, it's like, wow, this team is actually, we have to worry about them. Put it that way.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say in their defense. Like what they've gone through since LeBron left them the second time,
they've been horrific.
Might feel pretty good.
Yeah, so I don't expect a long run by any sort, but I just mean at this point, you have to say it's been impressive. Again, they've, no one on earth would have guessed they'd be 6 games over 500, especially if you knew Colin Sexton's been out for about 2/3 of the season, right? So
yeah, I also like the point that you made. It's very interesting to see the clash of styles when they play other teams because they're more of a, like you said, a paint mashing team. They have two 7-footers that are mobile big men that could guard out to the wing and cover all the pick and roll coverages. So they make it tough on teams. Yeah, they're missing some talent as far as like, scoring the ball, trying to keep up pace with other teams. But I like in the direction that the Cavs are going. For sure.
Yeah, and just what you said, I love I always, one of the biggest issues I ever have is, certain coaches in any sport, they coach to their philosophy instead of their talent.
Right.
I think Bickerstaff, it's been incredible. Like I said, he's totally bucked every trend and said, this is what we are. This is our identity. We're not Golden State. We're not, we can't play like that. I'm just very impressed with their whole approach. I think it's been very solid.
Yeah. Sure. But bah humbug. Shadd calling the Cavs pretenders has got me in the spirit of laying out some of my disappointments for this season. I want to start with Tinseltown, the LA Lakers. They went out in the offseason and acquired a bunch of names. The most notable, Russell Westbrook, but it includes Carmelo Anthony, DeAndre Jordan, Dwight Howard, Rajon Rondo, and the list goes on and on. They even had Isaiah Thomas there for a little bit. But whatever is going on in LA, it's just not working. They're like a really attractive girl who has bad hygiene. That's like a perfect analogy for the LA Lakers. I'm thoroughly disappointed with how they've been playing, and everybody thought they would be at the top of the Western Conference. And although it's figuratively early, it's looking real grim for the Lakers.
Oh,
are there any thoughts?
Snaggletooth prom queen. Snaggletooth prom queen. Well, they went all in. So I give them credit for all the chips on the table, but it didn't work out. And as we were talking about earlier, that's just the style that they tried to work on paper. I don't even know if it really worked on paper, let alone on the hard court, because you have someone that's such a huge scorer. So you say, okay, maybe LeBron can be more of a facilitator, but Rusty's not a spot up shooter. He's not someone that's going to come off the ball, like Kyrie or someone that's a point guard that works better as a shooter and a scorer. Like Rusty needs the ball in his hand too, and AD's game has evolved to the point where he works in a pretty reliable perimeter game for a shot blocker. So that doesn't.
You sure about that?
Is he your spot up shooter? He certainly shoots like he does.
No.
Didn't he have the worst shooting percentage of 2-pointers in the league?
Yeah, that's pretty bad.
He comes out and shoots threes though. Now, why you could shoot threes and not twos, I don't know, but it's 2020. It's almost 2022 in the NBA. That's what it is.
It's just I think that the Lakers, fundamentally, they have I think we mentioned this earlier. They have a real spacing issue. Their starting five consists of Russell Westbrook, who can't shoot, LeBron, who's an okay shooter, but he's really not a knockdown shooter. Then you have whoever at the three, whether that be Wayne Ellington, Trevor Ariza, or whoever you're going to put at the 3 or 4.
Or Carmelo. We as Knicks fans know what happens when he shoots a lot.
Right. AD, and then either DeAndre Jordan or Dwight Howard, and who also can't shoot. So defenses are just loading up on whatever side the ball is on, and they're not worried about anything that's going on behind them as long as they got the shooter tracked. And this is making the game extremely hard for their more dynamic players like LeBron, AD, Russie. I don't know what they have to do to fix this. Trades, but it's who wants Russie? Who's going to give you the play that you want for Russie?
And who wants all these veteran role players?
That too. Nobody wants DeAndre Jordan. Nobody wants Dwight Howard. They really they're almost to the point where they can't play in today's league.
Greg, you got a solution, or you got to just shit on them more?
I think it's a chemistry issue. We said earlier you have two guys in Westbrook and LeBron that are ball dominant guys, and it's hard. That they don't have the complementary piece. Like we're talking about Golden State or even the Nets. We spoke about Patty Mills. They don't have those type of guys right now. So I don't know how you fix that, just in the sense that, like, playing defense against them. I mean, again, pack the paint as much as you can. Let them shoot all day long. And so that's where it becomes an issue. Like, Russ is used to, and I don't think it's all his fault either. I think it's a product of pieces that necessarily just don't fit well together. And I don't know how you really do fix that. I mean, I don't, yes, will they make the playoffs? Yes. I don't see them turning on a switch though, just with their team makeup. Like, where's the knockdown shooters that they're going to need? When I don't see it. So I'm definitely bah humbug on them as well with James. I think there are serious issues there.
Chad, you gonna save this or you gonna dump on him too?
Well, I think it's Street Clothes' fault. He's always hurt, and then I feel like when he's
Street
in the
clothes?
game,
Street clothes.
yeah, that's the
So-
nickname they gave him. Street Clothes. Anthony Davis. He's always hurt. He's fragile. I don't know.
Fragile.
But when he's in there, I feel like he doesn't dominate. He should be what he used to be talked about as like a top 5 player in the league. Now he's just seems like another star player, not a superstar player. He should be taking over from LeBron as definitely the top player on the Lakers. He hasn't done that. He hasn't come like quite in shape the past couple of seasons. Maybe that's had led to some of these injuries, but maybe it's just his history. And I think, yes, he doesn't. I think with his style, that's the reason they got Westbrook, because he's always hurt. Westbrook is never hurt, and Westbrook always plays hard. Anthony Davis plays soft, and he's always hurt. So I think it's more a motivation. Like, oh, LeBron's not going to play. LeBron's almost 40 years old, so he's not going to play hard all the time, and he wants to take some games off. Russell Westbrook may have the best motor since like Kobe Bryant in the league. So I think that's probably why they got him. The motivation, when LeBron is out, and to get AD, in shape and playing hard, the way he was kind of back in New Orleans. Obviously it hasn't worked. Russell Westbrook, I guess he's trying too hard. When he has the ball, you see he has a lot of turnovers. He's the lead in turnovers. He just got to stop with the jump passes. I know this may not be the role that he wants, but he's probably a better sixth man on this team.
On that team, yeah.
Probably him and Carmelo should be coming off the bench, and then when they come in the game, both of them just get the green light. Like, all right, you two take the ball, you guys run the offense, and it's go, 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 go. But I think his pride is not going to let him take that, but that's probably the best role he should be doing.
Chad, something that you brought up as well. I agree, and I didn't even touch on that. The age injury factor on that whole team, like Anthony Davis, it is what it is. He's out a lot. LeBron missed significant time. These guys, Russell's not. I mean, yes, he plays all the time and he's tough as nails. Carmelo, these guys aren't young. I mean, so aside from the fact they're not playing well and it doesn't appear to be an easy fix, I have zero confidence whatsoever that they're any bit close to 100% healthy come playoff time. I think that's another issue they have to deal with.
Absolutely. Partner, any thoughts?
Well, I'll push Shad a little bit on making Rusty come off the bench. If that's going to happen, then obviously LeBron's going to have the ball in his hand as the primary facilitator. But then do you put a regular point guard on the floor? Because if that's the case, it's going to be Rondo. He can't shoot. He's probably a worse shooter than Rusty. Or are you going to put someone like Ellington on the bench who's, just a shooter, but, he's not going to give you that much. Or Carmelo, who might be a shooter, but he's a volume shooter. I mean, Carmelo can't be a volume shooter on that team. There's too many guys that need the ball in their hands. So if you were to put Rusty on the bench, if you were to, bite his tongue and, and let his ego take a hit, how are you going to make the rotation work in a functional basketball way?
I don't know. I guess you put LeBron, I guess the point, you probably put Malik Monk at the 2, and then with Taylor Horton Tucker at the 3, and then Street Clothes when he does play. And I don't know, either Dwight Howard or DeAndre Jordan at the 4. I think it could work. I would try it out. I don't know. At this point, I don't know. You can't keep doing what you're doing because you might miss the playoffs. And right now is the time. Anthony Davis is out, so you just have to try to get chemistry by picking different lineups. I don't know. LeBron's the coach of the team, really, so whatever he wants to do.
That's true. Greg,
Hey, you know what?
would it take something drastic like this?
You know
Or
what?
some
They
more
could try.
tweaks?
They could try the Jeremy Lin approach. Reeves hit the biggest shot of the season for them. One of the games is 3 at the buzzer. So I mean, hey, maybe they get lightning in a bottle for. I mean, I'm kidding, but he's played. He's played decently in sparing minutes. So I don't know.
Yeah.
They're gonna have to do something.
For sure. So for me, that's my biggest disappointment of this season. I really wanted those guys to start off strong, but it's not looking good for the LA Lakers.
Greg didn't.
All right, so Greg, since you didn't, what are you most disappointed by this season?
Oh, well, we'll stay in Cali, Sacramento. They appear to be in constant dysfunction. It seems no matter what they do, they get rid of Divac. Now they fire Walton. Bagley, the former number 2 pick, his dad's yelling in the media about his lack of play, or his agent. He's never playing. They perennially seem to never find a way to get better. I mean, even Davion Mitchell. I was looking the other day, who I think was a great draft pick out of Baylor. He has over a 3 assist to turnover ratio. So you're putting him with Halliburton, De'Aaron Fox, and those are 3 guys at the guard position. You would think they'd be improving, and they just cannot figure it out. And it's one of those deals where you like, what is the direction again? I mean, yes, I think Mitchell and Halliburton and Fox for that matter, are definitely buildable pieces. But even with that said, it seems like you would expect them to have taken a step forward this year. Buddy, how many years has Buddy Hield been in trade talks?
Yeah.
Since 1984, I think. My point is, what are you going to do with him? Like, you need to make a decision one way or the other. Like, yes, he can shoot. Like, and if you're blaming the problems all on Buddy Hield, I don't think that's anywhere close to the issue.
Right.
You might have an issue of the same type of player and not enough complementary pieces, but like, I just expected them to take a leap this year, and they're in the same. I just feel like they're in the same mess as always. It's Sacramento back in the basement, and again, it's dysfunction off the court, and very frustrating. Like I said, I'm disappointed because I do love Halliburton and Mitchell, and you start to wonder. Some of these teams, you wonder, like, does the environment hurt their development as players? I start to wonder that now too. Is it that? Because they have some talent here, but again, for me, they're the most disappointing. They're almost completely irrelevant again, in the same boat. And when does it end? So that the Kings they get the bah humbug from me.
Yeah.
Well, at the top of, like, you were huge on Mitchell, and he was a great draft. He was a great player coming out of NCAA. You were big on that draft pick, and I was wondering, like, is it just too many cooks in the kitchen? Like, how many guards do you need? Can you draft can you draft a center once? Or
Chase, he's
4?
a little different though, like I said, because Mitchell can have a substantial impact without scoring. That's the difference with him. And as I said, he's by far their highest assist turnover guy in the team. So obviously that's, especially out of a rookie, that's a very good sign. But again, it just seems like there's always dysfunction within the roster, outside the team, the coaching staff, like, Walton. I mean, you can't say he did a good job. They've been terrible since. So I just mean, again, it's one of those teams. They remind me, unfortunately, of what our Knicks had been for 10, 15 years, or maybe decades. Just when do they get this right? They do have a couple of pieces here now, but do we have any faith this front office management ownership is steering them in the right direction? And I don't necessarily think that's the case.
Those C-Web Peja Stojakovic days feel like they were as long ago as the Oscar Robertson days.
Yeah.
Pretty much.
I think the Kings are definitely going to be sellers in this upcoming trade deadline. They're going to be looking to move both Buddy Hield. They're probably actually moving this time, and maybe De'Aaron Fox too, and just let the youth movement work over there in the Kings, because, like you said, it's not looking good. They got to build a coach. They got to build everything from the ground up over there, and it's not fair to the players that are a little bit older. Let them go and figure it out on their own.
It's funny to say move on with the youth movement and trade De'Aaron Fox, who's like, what, 23, 24?
Right.
It's just, again, that they're on the same point. It's just, you look up and down the roster and there's always a Bagley. Like, I don't care what if Bagley isn't worthy of the number 2 pick, where it doesn't look like he is. I find it hard to believe that he's that bad, that he's unplayable as well. And the other point about this, you know what, quite frankly, internally, if they really decide amongst them, you know what, like Bagley is not a piece to him. Ideally, you know what, keep the kid playing some to boost his value.
And to get him out of there.
Bury him. Yeah. Like even if you're trying to showcase him. So what's their approach? And again, this is where organizationally, I think they're exact opposite. I know the Spurs have struggled recently, but you know how they always did the right thing organizationally, building prospects, player development. I feel it's that organization. Like, they're killing themselves and the kids on the team at times. Again, how does Bagley, how can you tell me that Bagley serves them better playing no time and now you can't even trade him? You see what I'm saying?
Right.
Organizationally, I think it's a mess. And I think there's way too many cooks in the kitchen and nobody has figured out the right way to operate this team.
Chad, you on the fire sale train for Sacktown?
I am, because I just think this roster is not good. I think they have a bunch of just role players. I think probably everybody except De'Aaron Fox would be like a 7th, 8th best player on another team. People like Harrison Barnes, Buddy Hield, Rashawn Holmes, people like that are like starters on this team, and they would be on the bench on any other team in the league. So it's like, you're not going to want to pay these players that much money when you know you're not that great. So I think you have to sell them to like a Lakers, a Philadelphia, wherever. Get draft picks. Maybe somebody might throw you a bone, like a Ben Simmons, who's very unhappy, and you just gotta start over, because you're not. Why would you want to pay somebody like Harrison Barnes, who's proved he's not anywhere near a star player, or a Buddy Hield, who's good, but he's basically just a 3-point shooter. He's not a star player. Or people like Rashawn Holmes, who nobody even really knows, or Marvin Bagley, who's underachieved. You just gotta, kind of blow it up. I can see maybe keeping Fox, but everybody else, you got to go. I'm sorry, trade him for a bag of balls or something.
Not the Spaldings.
All
right, one last thing, they're terrible defensively as well. They're perennially towards the bottom of the league in that metric. So even if offensively they were clicking and Buddy's knocking down X amount of threes a game, they still can't guard worth a damn. It seems like that's been a problem for 20 years, and that's where I say it just Davion Mitchell will help them on the perimeter, but aside from that, it just seems they're a mess. There's no direction ever.
Who's the next dumpster fire?
Chase, let's go with you.
My dumpster fire is pretty bad. That is the Indiana Pacers. Oh boy, I thought this was like a prime example of a team to really like come out of nowhere and surprise the people this year. They're always kind of floating around mercurial playoff contention. They got a ton of young talent between Brogdon, Sabonis. Justin Holiday had a really good year. They got that kid Duarte coming in from Oregon. Miles Turner's a big body in the middle. TJ Warren, injuries aside, that's a solid player. TJ McConnell had a big year for them as a 6th, 7th man. I was thinking you bring in someone like Carlisle, who coached the Pacers in the past. He's kind of a tough, gritty type of coach. It's like, okay, this is the guy to come in, get these kids some discipline, get this ship righted, and they've just completely gone the opposite direction. And I think a few weeks ago, they were talking about fire sailing everybody. And I'm like, you have this much talent in this roster. How is this a fire sale mode? And it's not like, we just went on length on the Kings with this ton of talent, but they all kind of play the same position. You've got a very diverse roster in Indiana. You've got big men, you've got swings, you've got point guards. Why can't they figure it out? Why did this work? You figure all they needed is some strong hand to kind of like push them in the right direction and motivate them, and it just completely backfired. Why?
It's a good question.
You mean Sacramento of the East?
Oh, it's that bad? Because Indiana's kind of has like peaks and valleys, where Sacramento's just a valley.
Well, Chase, they got a bunch of role players that are like the first, second, third best on the team. And they got any other team, they'd be like, fifth, sixth, seventh rotation guys, with the exception of maybe like Sabonis. Like people like Brogdon, he was never a star on like a Milwaukee when he's on Milwaukee. He was always kind of just like that fourth, fifth best player. He comes to Indiana, he's like their second best player. Karis LeVert, he's good, but he always seems like he's always injured. So I didn't even mention him. You're right. That's a scorer. He's a scorer, but doesn't mean he's a star. There's a difference between a scorer and a star. Yeah, he's the type of person he could get you 20 points a game, but at the end of the day, is he really helping your team kind of win with little things other than scoring? I never really thought about him like that. I think if he was like a fourth, fifth, maybe sixth option on a team, they'll be a good team. Like when he was on the Nets, a couple years ago, he used to come and light it up. It seems like he's like that Jamal Crawford type of player who just kind of, is a scorer, slasher type of person, but doesn't really make other people better. And then Miles Turner, I just think he's an okay big man, but like we've said many times before, the NBA is moving away from like traditional big men. Even though he can shoot a little bit, but his game is just not, as good as like a Karl Anthony Towns, where they can shoot lights out all day long, from the outside. So he's kind of in between right now. So I think he's either have to pick and be like that dominating presence in the inside, like a Rudy Gobert or something, who plays like lights out defense and rebounding, or he's got to be like that soft, shooting big man like a Karl Anthony Towns. He just doesn't have like a defined role, in my opinion, because he's not even averaging like 10 rebounds a game. For somebody that big to not even averaging 10 rebounds a game, that to me is, I don't know, that's a problem. And then you have, it's just from role players down from there. You got Holiday, McConnell, Lamb. Like, stop me where you see like, oh, these are good players. These are, players that could potentially be all-stars or potentially, be starters on other teams. Like, what do you have, like 3 starters that you kind of say, oh yeah, they can start on any team in the league besides, that is not at the bottom of the league? No, you have these like I said, probably C+, B- players besides probably Sabonis.
Well, it's not. Yeah, I mean, Sabonis was an all-star last year, and we talked a lot last season about how he's probably the best player nobody really knows about. And
yes, we
talked at length. We talked at length on Greg's Cavs about them having the success with these 2 traditional big men, and one of them, Jared Allen's a journeyman role player, and Mobley's a rookie. So why can't the Pacers do the same thing with Miles Turner, who's been in the league now several years? Big body, gets boards, gets blocks. He's still top 5 in the league in blocks. And Sabonis, who's an all-star.
These are questions that the front office of the Pacers would love to have answers to.
They are, well, right now they are more of a front office.
I'm gonna go Buddy the Elf on this one. The reason I say that is I don't think the meal, if you put it all together, is as bad as it's been, but they need to add some serious maple syrup to it. Like, they're 7 under 500. But I look for statistical anomalies like that. They actually have a plus point differential on the year, which if you usually extrapolate that over a full season, you're going to expect, regression to the mean kind of like. So I think Indiana, they definitely have issues. I think their record is, I don't think they're this bad either. I just think sometimes, you run into a few games you lost that you shouldn't have. I don't think they're a factor. And I think they have to figure out a direction going forward is their biggest issue, because, Miles Turner is basically publicly stated he wants out.
Yeah.
Interesting to me is Chris Duarte, who they drafted, has played really well.
Yeah.
The issue with Chris Duarte, though, is this. He's the oldest rookie in the league. He's like 24 years old. So the point is, Indiana is like, I found it not an odd fit on the team, but an odd fit direction wise. Like if you're going to try and rebuild, which now it seems like they're going to, wouldn't you opt for someone younger than Duarte, who's 24 as a rookie? So
Right.
I think they're kind of. I think as the season goes on, I would expect them to play a little better than this. But I think long term, they're almost now in that dreaded place. Like, are you playing every year for the 7-8 seed? And that's probably the worst place of any team to be, other than maybe the Knicks in Sacramento for 20 years. But
Right.
yeah. So point is, I agree. They have been highly disappointing. I would expect somewhat of a better, because they do have some talent there. But I think organizationally, like, this is a put up or shut up moment. Like they have to really get down to like, where are we going with this? And that's their biggest issue in my mind.
Well, and you put all these anomalies, like maybe it's not that bad. Like, wouldn't that then promote more of a Hawk situation where like, okay, let's just weather the storm and make some tweaks here and there and get healthier, whatever the case may be. It just kind of like keep pushing, we'll be fine. Not this fire sale, all these fire sale talks that kept coming out of nowhere.
Yeah, I think it's a tough one because, like, whereas Atlanta, you have Trae Young, you have a definitive, star player that you're going to focus the team around. Like, I love Sabonis too. I think he's a very good player, but in a league that's primarily dominated by guards, they don't have a guard you're building around. Like, Brogdon's a decent player, Duarte's a nice role player, and even LeVert, but LeVert is, to Shad's point, I mean, I love him as a player. He's always getting hurt. I mean, there's no way you can tell me. So they're lacking that star that, we all know come playoff time, if they get in, they don't have that. And that's tough to get. I mean, teams spend decades, trying to find that guy to build around. And I think Sabonis is a stud player. But I think he'd almost be like your two. He's not the guy, your mega superstar you're going to build around. And I think that's where they are now. Like, they need a star to build around, and they don't have it.
Yeah.
And and it's hard to get that when you stay in that 7-8 range all the time. You're not getting a top 10 pick. You're not like, if I'm them, I'm probably breaking it down at this point.
You're going to be on a treadmill for the rest of your life.
Yes.
Yeah. So yeah, they got to blow that up.
Who's got Cole left to dish out?
Shad, who you got some shade for?
Oh, Greg's favorite team, the Boston Celtics. This team has had too much talent, I would say, at least the past 4 or 5 seasons, and they just completely underachieved. And this year, I don't think they're 500 right now. No, they're 16-19. They have probably 2 of the top 25 best players in the league in Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown. And it just seems like these 2 players cannot play together. I'm not really going to say whose fault it is, but a lot of people say it's Tatum's fault because he just dribble, shoot, and just care. I guess stat stuffer. Just worried about his play. Maybe it's the new coaching. Udoka, I don't know how good of a coach he is. I know he's a product of like the San Antonio Spurs system. So maybe that's what they're relying on, to get these kind of players playing together. But for a team, that made it to the Eastern Conference Finals a few years ago, they had a loaded roster without Kyrie. Everybody thought it was Kyrie's fault. And then they had, guys like Kemba Walker last year. And they just always had like these star-studded rosters. And you feel like, oh, they're going to make it to like the NBA Finals at least one year, or make it to a bunch of conference finals. And it just seems like they keep taking a step back when it should have been the other way around. When they were young, they seemed like, oh, yeah, this team was a great team. And now, they're more mature and they're a team that's, out of a playoff spot right now, or like I got the last play-in spot. So they're definitely a disappointment in my eyes.
So Greg, you took a shot at your beloved Boston Celtics.
Well, Shad, no, he knows who's being facetious. I may live in the area. I hate the Celtics. I mean, Larry Bird made for many bad days as a Knicks fan as a kid, and I don't forget it. But they're an interesting scenario because, like he said, they do have two top players. They have some role players who are playing well around them. Robert Williams, the young kid, has played very well. Schroeder has actually played well at the point for them, better than he's been in a few years. I think you're starting to question the chemistry between Tatum and Brown. And listen, I know Tatum's an excellent player. I will say, being close to here, seeing him more than he has not had a great season. He's not shot the ball well, especially late in games. I think when your leader Marcus Smart says, and like we touched on earlier, says to the media itself that these young kids need to learn how to pass the ball. That's saying something. They're trying to tell these two guys, what, they'd both be, and I think it's more so Tatum because he's I just get the feeling he's the leader. He needs to mold his game. He needs to be more polished, and it's not just points, obviously. Mm-hmm. So, but it's hard. I mean, because I don't want to say you need to blow this up because when you have two top 25, 30 players, I mean, that's hard to get those players. They don't, you can't pick them off trees. Right. So I would, if I'm the Celtics, I don't make any drastic moves this year. I'd let this play out. I'd give Brown and Tatum another. I mean, there's still more than half the season left. I'd give them time to see, can they figure out a better way to make this work? Because they should be better than this, and they have the ability to. But yeah, right now they're not playing well. There don't seem to be any signs of improvement. But if it's just me, I got to let this play out a little more. So because quite frankly, the other thing about it is, if you're going to blow this up, you're Brad Stevens. I want to know more which person I'd rather actually hold on to. Is it Brown or Tatum? Because you can make an argument either way, right? I mean, Tatum is probably more of your 1A scorer. You can make an argument that Brown is your better overall player because he's a better defender. And so I think for that reason, I'd almost want to let this play out another year because you're not winning a title this year, but you're too talented to try and become the Pacers either. So
do you go out and get Ben Simmons? He's on the board.
So early in the year, so this was in the media up here. They basically were saying they wanted a package around either Tatum or Brown, and the Celtics immediately said no.
Yeah,
I don't know at this point if their attitude has changed on that, but it was a steadfast no earlier in the year. That's a tough. Well, put it this way, in my opinion, if you're bringing in Simmons, you have to deal Brown because you can't have I think we'd all agree Tatum is the better offensive player, correct? The better scorer long term. Brown can score, but Simmons is primarily defense and everything else. So I don't think Brown and Simmons would work. Tatum and Simmons might work better. You get what I mean from that perspective. But that's not an easy scenario. I think I give it a little more time if I'm them, the Celtics. And they listen, they have, if there's one bright spot, they have a lot of contributions from some young kids. Like Langford's playing decent lately. Pritchard, I'm not saying these guys are stars, but the point is you could have these guys can A, build their value in the trade market if you want to deal some of them, and B, you're going to need help like any team. You need a surrounding cast. So unfortunately for them, they're in a tough spot. I would stay the course right now.
I'm out on Tatum. As I said before, I think he got to go. He's taking way too many bad shots. His basketball IQ looks non-existent at times. I think he's got to go. I mean, he's making all that money. He's got to perform. He's got to be the leader. You said before, who's the leader? Well, Jason Tatum's getting the leader money. Be the leader. Live up to that paycheck.
It's a tough one with him. It is because I mean, if you deal him though, who are you getting back that has that upside potential? That's the thing. I mean, which I don't think they do. I'm just brainstorming. Damian Lillard, who's older, and then if the Celtics don't win in the next 2 years, which I don't think they would, I think it's a tough spot.
Yeah,
tough spot.
Well, that's a nice segue because I want to ad lib for a minute and bring up two teams that we didn't even talk about, and we spent a lot of time on Sacramento. Both are even worse than Sacramento. One of them is who you just implied. They've been in the playoffs the last several years, and that's Portland. And the other one is New Orleans. Zion hadn't even stepped foot on the court this year. Like, why bother? And like, if he's not going to play this year, why not just get rid of him?
You can't get rid of Zion. Zion was probably the most hyped NBA prospect since LeBron James. There's just too much money surrounding him. I don't think you can just give up on him like that. Maybe if he, has like a bad attitude, trade me, attitude, I'm not playing Ben Simmons, okay. But, just because he's hurt, there's too much value around him. There's too much hype. I think, New Orleans as the whole basketball team relies on like this Zion's kind of marketability.
Mhm.
I would trade just about everybody else besides them, Brandon Ingram and whoever else they got, because they just been underachieving I feel like since they've been in New Orleans. They had one good year, I feel like, with Anthony Davis. But I think you gotta get some pieces on the draft, or I don't know, maybe get some of those pieces to trade for like a Benson type of player. Because Zion cannot be a number one. He just, I don't know, his weight issues or his motivation. He just needs like a veteran presence to light a fire under his butt. So that's why I would trade like with Brandon Ingram. He seems kind of laid back, somebody who's not really a leader. He's just more of a star scorer type. You gotta trade. I don't know. I doubt you get like somebody like a Chris Paul, maybe like a Russell Westbrook, somebody who plays hard all the time to motivate him. Somebody like that.
Greg, thoughts on either one of these?
I think this is a tough one for me because I do agree with Chad that Zion, his body size, the injuries already, I think it is an issue. I thought it prior to when he got drafted, but I also, I don't think he's the issue per se. I'm just looking at their roster right now, and I think, granted, they weren't a playoff team anyway, but losing Lonzo Ball was actually a big deal with this team. Their lead guards right now are Devontae Graham, Nickeil Alexander-Walker, and Josh Hart. That reminds me of Nick backcourts over the years, and it's not to cut. Like, these kids are young. Hart's a really good role player. Graham, the same thing. Walker's a young kid. But what team in the NBA is going to win with that guard 10?
Yeah.
Really. If Zion is back or not, you have to improve the backcourt, right? That's the first thing that stands out at me. I look at that. I'm like, how could you be expected to win with that backcourt? Right.
Yeah.
So
in today's NBA, nonetheless.
No, really. Yeah. And even Zion, who's a bull, he's not like your defensive big man presence. They're missing pieces. There's no two ways about it to me.
For sure. And Portland was the other team you touched on, right? Right, partner?
Yeah.
I think
they're doo-doo.
I think it's only a matter of time before they blow that up.
Which rips my heart apart. I really wanted Dame to be that semblance of old of a superstar that stays with one team, but at this point, I just have no hope for it anymore.
Yeah. Maybe they could get Ben Simmons by trading CJ McCollum, but does that fix everything that's wrong with Portland? I don't know.
No, I think you got to start over too, because you got a new coach in Chauncey Phillips there. I think they kept this team together, just for this season to see maybe he has a magic switch like a Steve Kerr kind of did with the Warriors or some other team I can't think about right now. So I think it was the right thing to do to keep everybody together for this year. And I think you still keep them together for the rest of this year. But if you see you're still at the bottom of the conference end of the year, and I think that's when you blow it up. So I would blow it up, but just not now. I would give Chauncey Billups one good year, see how Dame likes him, the rest of the team likes him, and just how the chemistry is with the coach. And if they're still at the bottom, they don't like I'm going to improve, I would definitely, trade everybody.
I agree.
Greg,
Well,
last thoughts on Portland or the
Yeah,
the
I
2022
just
trash cans?
I think I'm at the point with Portland. I think the run as this team is constituted is over. I don't see this team making a run. I don't, you know, this is the tough one is here. Obviously, Lillard is going to bring you by far the most back, but I don't necessarily think they have to trade Lillard per se, but the Lillard McCollum combo, just as far as the team, their roster on a whole is not great. So you're going to have to deal one of these parts. You know, if I'm Portland, I guess I'd try and start with McCollum and see what I can get. But I feel like they've slowly been trending downward the last few years. You know, and that's tough to say. They've had good years, but I feel they're much further away from a title than they were a few years ago. So I think it's somewhat blow up time of that roster. I do. Yeah. I mean, Nurkic came back. You know, he's played fairly well, but you know, they expected, that was a big piece. He was out all year. That hasn't, you know, unfortunately for their team, their record, it hasn't been that big a difference. Yeah. I don't love the talent on that team outside of, you know, Lillard and Nurkic is good, McCollum's good, but yeah, I don't think they're anywhere near contention personally.
Yeah. Sad day in Portland.
Hmm.
Well, me and my co-host, CProc, would definitely like to thank our guest Spurs for kicking it with us on this inaugural episode of this season of Hoops Boys Pod. But before you guys leave, in the spirit of our next segment, want to know if you guys have any predictions for the upcoming season.
Give us your finals picks.
Yeah, give me your finals picks.
Oh, we're not going to do a prediction? I mean, my prediction is going to be right, like I said in the last year.
That's Shadamas though, right? So he has to give us a prediction as well.
No, how's my San Antonio Spurs like parting with the Greg Popovich looking?
Pretty good.
Oh yeah.
They're in the play-on tournament as it stands, but barely holding on by a thread.
Yeah, it's looking like old Pop might be on his way out, like you predicted.
Yeah, what was it, like year 3, no playoffs?
Yeah,
he might even be getting to the point of retiring himself. I mean, he's not a young buck anymore.
this is true.
Right, he's not even Team USA coach anymore.
Yep, handed it over to Kerr. If I'm going to make if I'm going to go at this point in the season, as much as I hate to say it, I think the Nets have better complementary players around them. I think, again, Kyrie Irving, that's like predicting the weather 2 months from now. But I think they probably learned some things last year. I think another year together with Harden molding more into that point guard role. I would take right now the Nets to win, and I would take them over Utah. That would be my pick out of the West right now. Very tenuous at best. That West is a lot of contenders, but if you had to ask me right today, I kind of count on that team to have a good playoff run. Nets over Utah.
That's over Utah, and that's for the whole thing.
Yep, reluctantly so, but yeah, I think so.
My prediction, I'm gonna go with in the East. I'm gonna go with the Brooklyn Nets. Just like Greg said, they just have too much firepower. They got probably 3 of the top 10 players in the league. Only thing that scares me is if, I don't know, this part-time thing with Kyrie, if it's like a game 6-7 on the road, he can't play in somewhere like Milwaukee or, I don't know, Chicago, how that might affect the team. But I think if all 3 of them play, somehow they change the vaccination rule or he gets vaccinated, I don't think anybody's going to stop him unless it's kind of injuries like last year.
Yeah.
And for the West, I know you guys ain't gonna like it. I'm going with the Los Angeles Lakers.
What?
Wow.
I think they're gonna pull it together. I don't think, Goat James is gonna have them, like play this terribly when the time counts. I think Anthony Davis is going to come back strong. I think he's going to figure it out with Westbrook. I think Westbrook's going to take a back seat. LeBron's going to cure all, and they're going to make it to the finals. And I also think they're going to win it. And LeBron's going to get number 5.
All
He
right.
just spent 10 minutes taking a dump on Street Clothes' chest, and now he's going to be a significant factor in getting them back to the finals.
Well, it's going to be mostly LeBron. LeBron's going to be the one who ties it all together. LeBron's the glue of this team. And Street Clothes, he's going to be there. I mean, he's out for, I don't know, however long. He'll come back around like 10 games left in the regular season, and he'll be all right. They're just going to gel together, and, Goat Jam's going to make it happen.
That is loving that LA
Greg's
eggnog, baby.
You have heard it here first.
Greg's face when you said Lakers.
I mean, man, I want some of that eggnog, boy.
Good stuff, gang. Well, once again, we would like to thank you guys for kicking with us on this first episode, and can't wait for you guys to come back and kick it with us again. Thanks, Greg. Thanks, Shad. But when we come back, me and my lovely co-host, CProc, will be putting up our predictions on this upcoming season. So keep it locked. Hoops Boys Pod.
Welcome back. Thanks again to Shadd and Greg for joining our initial show of the 2021-22 season. We got it in right before 2022 actually starts. My friend, let's talk about some predictions.
Let's do it.
What about always the one that everyone wants? Who's going to win the most coveted, most valuable player award?
Yes, MVP. There's some strong candidates out there, but I think for me, the person that I've been seeing really elevate his team through all in every adversity would have to be Kevin Durant, aka the Slim Reaper. They're number 1 in the East. They have done that without Kyrie even being remotely available.
Allowed in the state.
James Harden has looked like a different player due to the route changes. Even though like the past couple of games he seems to like been picking up his scoring and all that jazz, but KD has been the one constant throughout this whole season for that Brooklyn Nets team, and he's elevated them to the number 1 team in the East without 2 of his best players either performing the way that they should or even being available. So I think KD for me would be this year's MVP so far.
I'm also going to go with a somewhat unoriginal choice, but I'm glad you didn't. But I'm still glad you took a different player entirely, because I'm going to go with the Chef. Number 1 out in the West. Big win on Christmas, as we already spoke about, over the Suns, who had been nipping at their heels the whole season. He's got his best plus minus in 5 years. Of course, that includes an injury shortened season. His points are up. His assists are on par with where they usually are. His rebounds are actually surprisingly up from normal. I don't know if he's ever averaged 5 rebounds a game. This is only so far. His threes percent, despite the fact that he's setting all the records, his 3% is just down a little bit. So I think it was under 40% when I checked the other night.
I think we're gonna start to see that change too. Not to cut you off, because he done broke all the records, so it's like it's no pressure now. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, that's true. Now he can focus on quality over quantity.
For sure.
But that I think just the fact that not only are they kind of back in it again, but they're right back to being dominant again, and they kind of look different from the dominant Warriors teams we're used to seeing. Obviously, Durant's long gone, and it's back to being Steph's team, and they're right back at the top. And who knows what's going to happen when Klay comes back? But I think they're right there.
Yeah, and big shout out to Steph. They're sporting the best record in the NBA right now as a team. Also, averages, season stats. Steph is averaging 27.7 points per game, 5 rebounds per game, and about 6 assists. And my pick, which is Kevin Durant, is averaging 29.7, 7.8 0.9 rebounds, so we could call that 8 and 6 assists. So both of them are really doing a lot for their teams, and I can't wait to see how this plays out.
Stat
with the rest of
stuffer.
the season. Yeah, stat stuffer Supremes.
I like that.
So, being that the MVP award is basically one that's more for a veteran player, we have some diaper dandies in the league taking the league by storm. So, I would like to know, CProc, who do you think, in your opinion, who's the rookie of the year so far?
I'm going to go, well, I'm looking over our numbers. And everyone putting up like the crazy numbers. They're all on real garbage teams. And I know with rookie of the year, that doesn't matter, nor should it supposed to be matter, because, if somebody gets an elite draft pick, they're pretty much established as a garbage team already. But nobody's really like blowing the ships out of the water. So I was kind of looking at a more diversified overall statistical output for what they're doing. And the two of them that jumped out to me were one, Evan Mobley with the Cavs. And not only the Cavs in the playoffs right now, outside of that play-in situation, he's almost averaged double-double. I think it was just under 14 points, over 8 rebounds. So, and they're playing with two like Jared Allen's having a double-double season too. So they're playing with these two traditional big guys, which is a era long forgotten by today's NBA.
Yeah.
And I'm just kind of impressed with the fact that not only are they doing that and succeeding and winning, but he's obviously a significant portion of that. The other one I was really impressed with, we spoke about on the end of last season, and Oklahoma City taking Josh Giddey. Now Oklahoma City is garbage, which is fine.
Yeah.
That should never equate to a rookie of the year winner. But Giddey is averaging, I think it was over 5 rebounds, over 6 assists, or vice versa. Can't remember which, and double figures. So he's looking like this crazy, versatile, do-it-all type of player, and that's going to be very good for them to build around.
No, I agree.
Especially with your boy, what's his name?
Shy Gillies.
Yeah.
Shy guy. Yeah.
That guy.
Yeah, that's a pretty good split. Evan Mobley is looking like the second coming of AD. Not to I know it's early, but like you said, he's almost sporting a double-double in his rookie season, also averaging almost 2 blocks a game. That's pretty, significant from a player that's just coming out of the college circuit.
I have to stop myself from calling him Catino Mobley when I see his last name.
That's his cousin.
Maybe. Is he?
No, I don't know.
We'll say yes.
And Josh Giddey is like he's a big playmaker, 6'8". He does a lot of different things on the floor. Kind of reminds me of a little bit of Ben Simmons-esque, because he's not like a big scorer, but he can do everything on the floor. He can defend, play make, rebound, score a little bit. So he's definitely a piece that the Thunder could use to build around with Shy Guy. For me, I also like Evan Mobley a lot to win this award, but my split would be Scotty Barnes. He's leading all rookies in scoring so far, and he's also averaging 8 rebounds a game and almost 4 assists. So for that Raptors team, he's getting it done. I wouldn't be surprised if both him and Evan Mobley would be battling out for this award.
And they're only half game out of the playoff play-in thing. I don't know what to call it. I don't want to call it a bubble, but the Raptors.
The Raptors, yeah. The Raptors are playing pretty well. I've caught a couple of games. Their defensive intensity is still there, and they're figuring it out. So I think they'll be fine in the next few seasons if they keep building correctly. Same thing with the Cavs too. They look like they're turning it around somehow. Yeah. So is there any more season awards that we should talk about?
Absolutely. How about the top shot caller for their teams? Who's the best man leading the end of the bench?
All right.
Don't steal my pick.
I will not. I don't know if I'm going to steal your pick. Of course, like this award is normally granted to the coach of the team that's doing the best or making the best change of their team. And to me, there's some obvious coaches up there for the leading team in their conferences. But for me, who I've seen the team that make the biggest jump is Memphis and Taylor Jenkins. I really like what he's done for this team. This is a sleeper pick, but with no John Morant, they went on like a 7-game winning streak, and they're beating some pretty notable teams, including the Clippers before they lost PG for an extended period of time. The Lakers, who have been struggling, but still they're a formidable team. They have a lot of big names on there, and they went into LA, both their home floors, and beat them pretty convincingly. I really like Memphis, and I think the whole Western Conference should be on notice because they're coming. And Taylor Jenkins is a really an integral part to them playing the way that they are.
I hope so. There's one of the biggest things I liked about last year is that fact that we had fresh blood in the finals. So I'm all about Memphis going on a big run. Not that I think they'll do it this year, but I'm all for it if they do.
So how about you? Who's your shot caller of the year?
I'm gonna go with the main man in the Windy City, Billy Donovan.
Billy Donovan, yes, that was another one.
And I think he's since he's finally, he kind of flirted several years back to come to the NBA and then ran away at the last second. But since he decided to give it a go, the Bulls, they've been down, but they've kind of weathered the storm and kept pushing it. Now they go through this entire face haul of this team after last year. They get rid of Lauri Markkanen. They bring in Lonzo Ball. They bring in DeMar DeRozan. They basically got this whole new team to surround around Zach LaVine, and somehow miraculously it's worked. They're right on the Nets' toes. They're only a game and a half back of the Nets for number 1 seed in the East. And it's been working. DeMar DeRozan's top 5 in the league in scoring. Lonzo doesn't look lost.
Yeah.
I'm all on the Billy Donovan train.
I think that's a really good pick too. And Billy Donovan is a really good coach. You've seen what he did with the Thunder when they traded away Russell Westbrook, and everybody thought like, hey, they're done in the water. They just have Shaq Gilgeous and an agent Chris Paul. Although Chris Paul played really good that season, so did Shaq Gilgeous. Billy was really, integral in putting the game plans together to help them make the playoffs with a team that nobody thought would make the playoffs. And especially they were like the 5th seed last year. To now, he has a bunch of vets on his team, but they're still really young. Zach LaVine has been playing really well, just as DeMar DeRozan. And they have defenders everywhere, so that team is really surprising everybody in the East. Nobody really thought that they would take a jump like this, but it's exciting to see. It's good to see the Bulls being good again, and let's see what happens.
It's just like the 90s, the Bulls and a team in New York. I just wish it was the other team in New York. Speaking of the East, let's go on the record. Let's go. Record. Who's coming out of the artist formerly known as the Eastern Conference?
I picked my MVP to be Kevin Durant. So I think I'm gonna go with the Brooklyn Nets to come out of the East, even though it pains me because we're both diehard Knicks fans. So
Nets get burned in hell.
But I think that the other team in New York, if everything goes well and they stay healthy, they should be able to come out of the East, no problem.
So you don't think that this funky little Fugazi thing they're playing with Kyrie, where he only plays on the road, that you don't think that's going to mess up chemistry going into the playoffs?
Yes and no. Yes, because you have to change your game plan from game to game, whether you're at home or on the road. But for those games that you are at home, you got a 20 plus per game scorer that can dominate games at will. Although we haven't seen him all season, so we don't know what type of shape he's in or anything like that. But history shows like all he has to do on that team is score. They have a playmaker in Harden, and they have a do-it-all guy in Kevin Durant. Just come in and get your 20 points and sit down, and we're fine. You know what I mean? And you know the trade deadline's coming up, so we don't even know if they're going to move on from Kyrie.
That's true.
So we'll see, but I think KD and James Harden with a halvesy Kyrie, they should be able to beat anybody. I think. Get
your 20 and sit down.
Right. How about you? Who's your team to come out of the East?
I'm gonna be unoriginal again, and I'm gonna go with the same team that went there last year.
Oh, the Bucks.
The Bucks. Yeah. Okay. I think they proved that. I mean, they're right in it. They're only 2 games behind the Nets, half game behind the Bulls, so they're right at the top of the conference. And I think they proved last year that they can in fact do this light switch garbage where they kind of slack off and just, you know, kind of float along, dink along, do their thing, and then all of a sudden, hey, we know what to do now. It's time to win a title, and sure enough, they can do it.
Yeah, and also like last year when they ran into the Nets, the Nets were still like, you know, hampered by injury, or Kyrie was missing. It can be the same instance if they meet in the Eastern Conference Finals and Kyrie can't play at the home games. You know what I'm saying?
That's true.
You know, that's still something to think about as well. If they, you know, reach all the way to the end of the bracket and they got to play each other for a 7-game series.
It might almost give Milwaukee a double home field advantage because they have, when they're at home and they have they have to deal with Kyrie too, but they have the energy of their fans, and then they go on the road and okay, they don't have their fans, but we have one less weapon we have to worry about guarding.
Yeah. So definitely some things to think about there with those two teams. Now that we spoke about, you know, those teams residing on the East Coast, let's talk about, you know, the West Coast. Some even call it the best coast.
Those bums out there on the West.
Who do we think is coming out of the West? CProc?
I think the Jazz are gonna finally figure it out.
Wow.
I think they're flying under the radar right now because the Warriors and the Suns are just beating the living daylights out of each other right now. And I think now the only negative here is the fact that the Jazz have to play one of these before the conference finals. Sure. In all likelihood. That's the only knock here. Of these 3 teams, 2 of them have to play each other first. But I don't know. I just think like they're like the Bucks of last year. You knock on this door long enough, eventually you got to break it down.
Right.
I mean, and if you don't break it down, you got to blow the ship up. So, I mean, I'll put some house money on the table and say the Jazz finally figure it out. The Warriors, Steph's playing great, as we already talked about, but we don't know what's going to happen with Clay. You know, we don't know, and you know, everyone's 6-7 years older than when they were this team the first time they did it. So, right. Yeah, they're a little bit of a different team this year, but style-wise, a little bit of a style-wise team, and they got a bunch of little young players now. But you know, how all their main guns are older now. Can they keep up? Can they keep it up when we get to April and May? And
right.
When they can't, are the young kids going to be able to fill the gaps? And then Phoenix, I would love for Phoenix to make it better. I would love to see Chris Paul win a title. But let's be completely honest, they're on borrowed time.
Yes.
I mean, Book's young, Ayton's young, but Book and Ayton were there, and that team was garbage. Chris Paul's the motor.
Yeah, he elevates that team.
Yeah, and I don't want to necessarily call him old because he's the same age as me, but at the same time, I'm not a professional basketball player. What say you, my partner?
All right. I feel everything that you're saying about both the Suns and Golden State, but for me, I think the Suns are going to do it again, just like how you think the Bucks are going to come out of the East again. I think the Suns have every I think to me they're the most complete team, both defensively and offensively. They have players like D-Book and CP, who's controlling the offense. Ayton's a legit post presence. You have defenders on the wings. Mikal Bridges has been playing out his mind. He's earned his money. And they're only one game behind the Warriors right now. So the Warriors have a lot of variables. Steph is playing really good. They're playing really good team basketball right now, and they're supposed to be getting Klay back. But like you just said, we don't know what version of Klay we're gonna get. And is it gonna be enough to put them over the top come April, May? But I think the Suns, they tasted it. They were really close last year, and I think they really believe that they can do it. They believe that they're one of the best teams they're the best team in the West and the best team in the NBA. But they got to prove it by hosting that Larry O'Brien trophy. But I think they can do it, and they have one of the best coaches in the league, in Monty Williams.
Yes, yeah. Hamani's another one I was happy to see him get a team to the finals because that guy dealt with some pretty poor circumstances with all the teams in New Orleans he coached, and on top of that, I believe he's got a kind of inspiring life story what he's gone through, with his family or whatnot.
For sure.
That and okay, so you're going with the Suns and the Nets. Real quick, who wins how many games?
Suns and Nets, if they meet in the finals, dang, that's tough. All right.
Make the TikTok go on your head.
I'm going.
TikTok.
This would be a really good finals because there's a lot of storylines there. And the main one to me is Chris Paul and James Harden. They were once teammates, and I know Chris Paul would love to send James Harden home without a championship. Even though I think the Brooklyn Nets have the better overall roster, dang, this is tough. I'm gonna edge it to the Nets, and I think they win in 6 because Kyrie's not gonna be able to play home games. And I think those games they'll probably, if they could steal one of those games, they can win in 6. But if not, it's gonna go 7 games. But I think they can win the Nets in 6.
So you think despite the fact that they're not gonna have Kyrie, that they could still overcome that, despite as it stands right now being the road team in the finals?
Yeah. I think the Nets can win in 6 against the Phoenix Suns.
I think Jazz and Bucks. I think the Jazz are going to be just so hyped to be there that Giannis is going to cement his legacy, and they'll win that. And now that they already have one, they'll dominate it when in 4 or 5.
Yeah,
I know we don't see sweeps in the finals very often anymore, but I think it'll be pretty like kind of done. Bye.
Yeah.
Say goodnight, Gracie.
And they match up pretty well, right? Like,
oh yeah, they're big. They're both bruiser teams.
Both really big teams. They're both. Donovan Mitchell's going to have his hands full trying to score against Drew Holiday or
Middleton
for that matter. And then you have Giannis. He's going to be able to lurk playing against that team because there's nobody that he has to like really focus on. You know what I'm saying? It's no LeBron there. It's no Paul George there. It's no somebody that's around his height that could score a lot of points. There's no one there on the Jazz like that. So he's going to be able to lurk a lot.
And how good is that matchup going to be, Giannis and Gobert?
It's going to be really good.
I mean, who else is going to guard him?
Yeah, that's the other thing. Like matchup wise, like they could still play. If they're going to play Rudy Gobert a lot, so that means Brook Lopez could play in that series and not really cause any hindrance on like defensive coverages or floor space and anything like that because Brook could shoot, and he's going to draw Rudy out of the paint, and that's just going to be a cause for disaster because that's where Giannis lives.
Yeah,
and I don't know, man. That's going to be a tough out for the Jazz. if that comes true, it's gonna be a tough out for him.
Yes, sir.
So yeah, that's a look into me and my co-host CProc's crystal ball for our predictions of this the future of this season. But if you want to interact with us and let us know your predictions, please hit us up on our socials at Hoops Boys Pod on both Instagram and Twitter. Let us know who's your MVP or your rookie of the year. Thanks for kicking it with us. This is the inaugural episode of this season. There will be plenty more to come. Keep it locked. Hoops Boys Pod.
Go.
Shot. Ah.